Chuck Schumer just got hit with the funniest possible setup imaginable. Now, MSNBC told him 71% of Democrats support voter ID, and he still called it Jim Crow. And what makes it worse, old Chuck Schumer used to support ID laws himself. So this whole video feels less like a debate and more like a man trying to outrun footage from the 90s. Pete.
Jess, there's a new Pew Research poll that 95% of Republicans, but also 71% of Democrats like this idea. So why do you not?
It's Jim Crow 2.0. And I called it Jim Crow 2.0, and the right wing went nuts all over the internet. That's because they know it's true. What they're trying to do here is the same thing that was done in the South for decades to prevent people of color from voting. For instance, if you change, you're a woman who got married and changed your last name, you won't be able to show ID and you'll be discriminated against. If you can't find a birth certificate or a proper ID, you'll be discriminated against. This is vicious and nasty. And I said to our Republican colleagues, it will not pass the Senate. You will not get a single Democratic vote in the Senate. We're not reviving Jim Crow all over the country. And when the American people hear what exactly it is doing and what its intent is doing, they're going to be against it as well.
Yeah, he's pretty upset that this whole Jim Crow 2.0 thing is not sticking. That response told you everything, right? The host gives him bipartisan numbers, and Schumer immediately starts talking like somebody asked him, to reenact 1963. That's the move now. Take a normal question, attach some historical trauma to it, and hope nobody notices you never answered the question itself. Because regular Americans here show ID to vote and think, yeah, obviously. You need ID to drive, ID to travel, ID to buy medicine. You need ID to open a bank account. And notice how he's sitting here trying to negate accountability. Basically saying if they lose another form of their identification, then they'll be, conspired against using another form of it. And it's what? Serious, man. You need ID for everything, but protecting elections, suddenly that's suppression. That argument is aging like warm milk. And the crazy part is Chuck Schumer didn't even believe this back in the day. He didn't. Because the internet just pulled up a clip of Schumer sounding like a completely different human being.
First of all, Social Security card is used from one end of America to the other as an identification card right now. Who are we kidding? If you want to pass a law and says it shouldn't be, I would ask the chairman and the distinguished minority member of the Social Security committee to pass that law. But let's admit the truth. Everywhere people go, they're asked for a Social Security card. In fact, one way to prove you're a bona fide person who can have a job is to ask for a driver's license and a Social Security card. This is an anti-fraud amendment. All over where we go, people say, well, why can't you stop illegal immigrants or others from coming here? And the number one answer we give our constituents is when they come here, they can get jobs, get benefits against the law because of fraud. And here, the gentleman from Florida has put together the most effective anti-fraud measure we can find without it changing the actions of the government one bit. And we find all this opposition. Ladies and gentlemen of this chamber, what I worry about is that this bill, which started out with good intentions, whether you agree with it or disagree with it, is going to end up being the same kind of thing that the public gets angry with us on. We say we're doing something, and we do nothing. Because every time someone makes a rational and small proposal to get something done, people say, well, what about this hypothetical, that hypothetical, etc. I urge support of this amendment. If you believe you want to stop fraud in immigration, you have no choice but to support this amendment.
And this is why the internet is undefeated. Young Schumer basically said, of course people use IDs. Stop pretending they don't. Matter of fact, he literally called it an anti-fraud measure. So now the real issue becomes what changed? That's what we want to know, Schumer. Because voter ID didn't change. Fraud concerns, they definitely didn't change. The politics, changed. That's why people get irritated with Washington. Not because politicians evolve, everybody evolves. It's when they act like they never believe the thing that their footage, they never believe that the thing that the footage of them, they never believed the thing there's footage of them saying. Sheesh. Wow, that was a struggle. And once people see that contradiction, they start looking at the bigger conversation differently. And that's where this next clip comes in, because now the conversation moves from voter ID to why are Democrats fighting this so hard?
Well, I appreciate you being here today. Let me just give you one concrete example, not anecdotal, but concrete example of what we believe to be valid voter fraud in the state of Pennsylvania. I draw your attention to an obituary listed for one Denise Ondish in Allegheny County, born 9/10/1946, deceased 10/22/2020. Her application to vote was received on 10/23, the day after she died. It was then mailed by the county back to her on 10/24/2020, 2 days after she had legally passed away. And the ballot was then received back at the county office on November 2nd, 2020. And when you go to the Secretary of State's website today, it says that she voted in this election effective November 2nd, 2020, a full 9 days after Miss Ondish of Allegheny County passed away. This is not, this is not empirical. This is not anecdotal. This is hard evidence. And if you do your jobs from the media, I'm sure you'll find additional examples. And this will be one of many that we will be filing with the court. Thank you very much.
Now, this is why people don't like being instantly told, nothing to see here. This right here. A woman passes away. Then somehow there's activity connected to her ballot afterward. But this error, fraud, incompetence, or system failure, regular people hear stories like this and think, maybe we should tighten things up. That's normal. But every time somebody says that, they get treated like they question gravity itself. And honestly, that reaction, it creates more suspicion than the question does. Because secure elections should not sound controversial at all. And now Republicans are trying to turn that frustration into legislation, because the SAVE Act, it goes beyond voter ID, y'all. And that's why this fight is seemingly getting louder.
3 weeks, there has been a lot of news under the surface about the SAVE Act. This is a bill to safeguard our elections and require proof of U.S. citizenship before voting, among other provisions. Now, our conversation on this started with Scott Pressler, who has been calling on Senate Majority Leader John Thune to allow a vote every day since January 1st. Earlier this month, Scott joined me here to make his case.
The American people demand Senate Majority Leader John Thune bring a vote on the Safeguard American Voter Eligibility Act, and let's have proof of citizenship to register to vote. We have this one moment in history with Donald Trump at the helm, with a trifecta Republican government. I say nuke the gosh darn filibuster, pass law after law after law.
That interview went viral and senators went into action. Senator John Cornyn said he spoke to Leader Thune about the SAVE Act. Senators Katie Britt and Dave McCormick signed on as co-sponsors, and several others like Rick Scott ramped up his support publicly. Here's Senator Scott last week.
However we do this, all right, whether it's part of the spending bill this week, whether it's a separate bill, whether we have to stay there, and do a standing filibuster, whatever it's going to take, we got to get this passed. We've got to secure our elections. I can't imagine a Republican senator that would vote against, making sure that you have to have proof of citizenship to register to vote and to vote. Now, how could anybody? I don't know how a Democrat could be against this.
Yeah. After that interview came an avalanche of support for the SAVE Act. You see it here. The tally now sits at 49 co-sponsors, and Senate Majority Leader John Thune said this week he will allow a vote.
They are still modifying the bill. It includes right now a requirement that you be a citizen to register to vote, but it doesn't include a requirement that to vote you be a resident. That's being fixed and addressed, and I think the new bill that comes out hopefully will deal with that. But, I mean, at some point, we'll have that vote.
Tennessee Republican Senator Marsha Blackburn, who's a co-sponsor, joins me now. Senator Blackburn, as we look at this, I believe there are either 4 or 5 Republican holdouts. And I'm curious, what's the holdup for some of your Republican colleagues?
Well, I never speak for my colleagues, Kayleigh, but I will tell you this. It is important that people be a citizen, that they show proof of citizenship to register and to vote. And in Tennessee, we have been ranked #1 when it comes to safe elections. And we are so proud of our Secretary of State, Trey Hargett, and his team that have been able to put us in that #1 election integrity spot. And when you go to vote in Tennessee, you have to show who you are. These records have to match up. Every state should be certain that only citizens are voting in their elections.
You know, Senator Blackburn, your colleague, Senator Scott, I asked him about eliminating the filibuster because we know that there will be 60 votes that are going to be needed for this, and there are only 54 Republicans. Right. He said that he would be open to maybe a carve-out for specific legislation, maybe attaching it to a spending bill, something, because this is that important. Where do you stand?
And one of the things that we have discussed, and Rick Scott, Senator Scott, leads our conservative group, our steering committee in the Senate. And we have talked about maybe we use it for the appropriations bill so you don't get into these shutdown fights. Maybe we review the 1974 Budget Act so that we go about appropriating differently. But here is the point. What you want to do is remove the ability of the Democrats to eliminate a filibuster and run roughshod, be able to pack the Supreme Court, be able to add D.C. and Puerto Rico and Guam as states, making certain that we preserve the integrity of our nation's elections and that we don't federalize elections, but it is your state and your local election commissions that are still going to be in charge of these. This is all about preserving who we are and what we are as a country, and that premise of one person, one vote.
Yeah, and James Carville has said, hey, if Democrats take power, we are going to eliminate the filibuster and do all of that. You know, Senator Blackburn, I do want to ask you quickly, because we only have a few moments here, but this government shutdown, it seems like it will be resolved come Monday. You guys have done your work in the Senate, and the House seems prepared to do their work.
Indeed, and it is so vitally important that in passing these appropriations bills, Kayleigh, we have moved from the Biden COVID-era budget to the Trump Republican budget. And for the first time in decades, we are bending the curve for spending. We're bending it down. That is really a big step to put us on the path to doing more cutting, more elimination, more rooting out waste, fraud, and abuse, and really tackling this in the manner that President Donald Trump has set forth. And I think it's a big victory for us that we've been able to get back to regular order when it comes to the appropriations process.
Thank you very much, Senator Blackburn.
See, this is the part Democrats don't know how to argue against without sounding strange. The bill basically says prove citizenship, clean voter rolls, penalize intentional fraud. And the response to that is somehow democracy is under attack. No. People are just tired of being told security is offensive. That's the real disconnect. Americans lock their phones, they lock their houses, their cars, their bank accounts, passwords, social media accounts, everything. But when it comes to elections, suddenly basic verification becomes emotionally illegal. That disconnect is why support for voter ID keeps climbing, even among Democrats. And then this next clip, it takes the conversation somewhere Democrats really don't want it going, because now you got people starting to ask whether immigration policies are reshaping political power itself.
AOC just once again tried to invoke Jim Crow in order to get black people to stand up and be a human shield for illegal aliens. But black Americans are not the human shield for Democrats to use whenever they get ready in order to have us riled up and ready to vote for them or to co-sign their disgusting policies. Check out this video.
Military force. We don't have a court system, right? They don't think they need judicial warrants. So you don't get due process. So you start creating this black box system.
That's right, black box warehouses.
Point a finger, whether it's like we saw in Jim Crow, whether you just point a finger and 100 years ago accuse a little black boy of something, you can point a finger and accuse someone of that today. If you think once you build that machine, that it's only going to be reserved to that.
That's right.
See, young AOC doesn't realize that the Democratic Party has been promising black Americans all types of ridiculous things that they have never been able to come through on. But miraculously, they were able to make it easy for illegal aliens to buy homes with I-10s. They were able to get illegal aliens into schools all across the city, in cities like Chicago. They were able to now they're doing full-scale No Kings rallies and protests all across the country, fully funded in order to show up for illegal aliens. You know who you have not really seen that for? The only time you've seen the Democrats do a full-scale assault and rally was for George Floyd. But you don't see it for literacy rates. The Democrats haven't done any of these types of protests for literacy rates, which are so incredibly low here in Chicago. Chicago is graduating kids who cannot read on a regular basis, to the point where they had to change the standard for what is a requirement for graduation. They decreased it so that they can continue to graduate more children. So you don't see the Democrats do anything to actually help black Americans. But as soon as illegal aliens are in the least bit of discomfort, here comes AOC bringing up Jim Crow. We are not going to we're not going to rally the troops for illegal aliens, AOC. We're not. They party is that they will co-opt language like lynching, and they will compare what's happening to people who did commit a crime to Africans, to black people who did not commit a crime. We did not commit a crime over here. We did not get lynched because we committed crime. It was just racist. No. Wait, people who got lynched, they didn't commit crimes. They were slaves, and they were being punished for rules that shouldn't have existed. We cannot allow the language and what happened to black people to be applied.
I'm going to do something. I'm going to stop because we're wrapping this up, and I got two more things to.
They actually do need to go because they are diluting the black American vote. They're diluting the American vote. So no, they do need to go back to their home countries, which is the best place for them to be, unless they are actually in a dangerous situation. And in that case, they should have pursued the proper processes for gaining access to America, which is not jumping a fence. ICE agents are doing the work they should be doing, which is needed in many communities, considering Chicago is a major cartel hub. We do need ICE to do exactly what they're doing. Cities all across the country want ICE. AOC doesn't want ICE because AOC is more than likely indebted to some type of entity that has nothing to do with America.
See, this is why the Jim Crow argument keeps falling flat now, because people are starting to notice something. Every disagreement cannot be turned into a civil rights emergency. At some point, regular Americans stop reacting emotionally and start asking practical questions. That's what's happening here. And honestly, Democrats created part of this problem themselves. They spend years treating every concern about borders, voting systems, crime, immigration, or enforcement like contamination instead of debate. So now when they sound the alarm again, people don't react the same way anymore. Not because people became evil. It's just because the volume, it got abused. And that might be the biggest problem Democrats have right now. The language that used to shut conversations down is now starting conversations instead. So, at the end of the day, this whole situation exposed something bigger than Chuck Schumer. Americans are exhausted with being emotionally managed every 5 minutes. If 71% of Democrats actually support voter ID, then this isn't some radical underground position anymore. It's a common sense position catching back up to politics. And honestly, once politicians start arguing against common sense too aggressively, people start They stop hearing that compassion. They start hearing panic. So, if you made it to the end of this video, I want you to put clipboard. Type clipboard in the comments. That way I know. Y'all be safe. Go check with somebody today. You can quite literally be saving their life. Peace.